Welcome to our presentation about birds communication. We are Antonio Cisneros, Daniela Vargas Montes, Noelia Palacios Mejías, Melanie González Navarro, and Meribeth Obregón Selva. Well, as you know, birds produce beautiful songs, and many people think that this is the unique way that they communicate each other. However, there are many aspects and different ways that they communicate each other. In ornithology, scientists study about how they communicate each other and also what are the functions of this communication. And some of these aspects and ways of communication are vocalization, bird calls, bird songs, dialects, and how birds and humans are related in communication.
Now I will talk about vocalization. As Antonio said, birds make tons of different sounds like rattles, chirps, whistles, drumming, and many, many more. But how do birds make vocalization? Well, there are two types of sounds, vocal and not vocal sounds. Let me see. Okay, as in human, bird phonation involves three main motor systems: respiration, vocal organ, and vocal tract. However, vocal sounds in birds are made by a special organ that only bird possess, the syrinx. We have here the pictures about the syrinx and all the system. Okay, the syrinx is located at the very top of the bird's windpipe, the air that comes in through the windpipe. I think we have it here in the first picture. It causes the membranes to vibrate and produce sounds. In other words, unlike humans, birds produce vocal sounds using a syrinx, an organ located where the trachea splits into the bronchial tubes. Okay, let me see. So the songbird vocal apparatus is adapted for high speed, suggesting that temporal patterns and fast modulation of sound features are important in acoustic communication. The rapid respiratory pattern determines the course of the temporal structure of the sound and also maintain gas exchange, even in during very long songs. So um, the respiratory system also contributes to fine control of airflow, and muscular control of the vocal organ regulates airflow and acoustic features. The upper vocal tract of birds plays a role very important, like in filtering the sounds and generated in the syrinx. Um, Let me see. Okay, got it. But source filter in interactions might also play a really important role. Okay, it's important to remember that the syrinx is part of the respiratory system. That is a very important thing. And well, its function are basically regulating airflow from the lung and modulating airflow during sound production. Let me see. Then we have here in this picture, you can see it here in pink. Yes, abdominal air sac. Well, the abdominal air sacs are functionally separated into an interior, here one, in the another, well, the others are also in pink, into an anterior and posterior set and attached to the cranial and caudal end of the lung. Airflow during inspiration is driven by expanding air sacs, the right, and expiration by compression by the air sacs, that is the left. But I think you are seeing the left and the right and the right and the left. And then, well, the lung, this one's in blue or purple. The lung is a set of rigid tubes, well, through which oxygenated air flows during both respiratory phases. Phases, yes, sorry. Okay, Noe, could you please go ahead with the next slide? Okay. Yes. Now we have this beautiful picture about how the settings works. Each side of the settings is independently controlled. Well, in this image, we can see that, uh, for example, they have both. They have like, um, yes, like I said before, uh, two parts that are controlled independently. So some birds even have the ability to sing rising and falling notes simultaneously. That is really amazing. And different songbird species make use of the two sounds generators in different ways. That means that the left sound source tend to generate lower frequencies than the right. And well, finally, I have that not vocal sounds can be made by other parts of the bird, such as the wings or the beak.
Well, as my classmates already said, birds communicate with vocal sounds like songs and calls, but they also can communicate with visual cues, for example, behavior and body language. These are three ways in which birds can communicate. The first one is behavior, for example, when a male dances to attract female. Other birds can behave aggressively when their nest or territory is threatened. Then we have body language. For example, when birds move their head, we could say that they are hungry. And then we have calls. Calls are short in length and they are less musical. These calls are used to identify family members, to announce about a predator, and to convey information about food. Codes are usually innate, but for other many species, this is like way of survive. Uh, these are three types of calls. The first one is alarm calls. These are like expressions of fear, and also it, it is used for birds when they want to warn about a predator. These calls are loud and intense, very similar to a yell, and other birds can have these calls like quiet and subtle, but it depends on the type of bird and the season and the level of threat. Then we have contact calls, which is basically to keep in contact to each other. Um, and the last one, begging calls. This is, for example, when birds make a call like saying, feed me, while they flutter their wings.
Well, similar to calls, birds have another way to communicate, and it is by songs. Um, Songs are more complex than calls, and birds use them to transmit different messages to other birds. Songs are mostly used by males, and they use them to defend their territory and to attract females. There are two songs that are the most common, and they are territorial songs and the antiphonal singing or duetting. So first, I am going to talk about territorial songs. These ones are used by males to defend their home from other birds that may want to get into their place. So this mostly happens when a bird that is not part of a community comes near that territory, and the bird that is part of the community comes near to him and perform a song to confront him. Similar to this, and to exemplify better the situation, an experiment by Falls in 1969 talks about how they put a white male sparrow, I think, in a community, in a neighbor, and then when he was like part of it, they play a song of another bird, and the reaction of this bird was very aggressive. So here we can see that songs in this situation is used to birds use them to warn others and to show like they are the ones that are in share of that territory. Now I'm going to talk about the antiphonal singing or duetting. Here, birds, males, use their songs to attract females, sorry, and it is curious because an author named Hooker said that many years ago, they believe that birds, only males in all bird species, were the ones that could sing, but they then developed a kind of system that is called duetting, where males and females communicate through switching parts of a song. So yeah, that's why it is called like that, because they share like notes in order to communicate, and each couple have their own sound, so they use them to recognize each other and to answer each other. And now I'm going to talk briefly about the acquisition of songs. Unlike calls that are an innate, something that they have or produce in an innate way, the acquisition of songs is by learning. So it's very curious because birds not only learn the songs that are for their own speech, but they also can learn if they share like many time with another species bird. They can learn also that sound, but it happens mostly when with experiments. So they have to spend a lot of months in a cage for them to learn other species sounds. So yes.
Okay, here we have two recordings. So you can hear and recognize which one is the bird song and the bird call. The first one is the bird song. And this one is the bird call. Well, as you could hear, the bird call is less musical than bird song.
Well, then we have dialects in calls and songs. First of all, the term dialect means that there is a same structure in the songs and calls. However, as there is a same structure, there are also differences in these songs and calls. And it means that these calls and songs are from the same species of birds. Well, dialects are much more common in bird songs than in bird calls. However, we are going to see an example of a dialect in bird calls. Then copying process is one of the process to acquire a dialect in birds. And it is when some birds are open to influences from other individuals. As Melanie said before, some birds learn their songs and also the calls. Um, there was an experiment where they showed, yes, that a bird in isolation learned the song and the call. However, if they are not exposed to other sounds, they cannot sing or they can't make a call. They just have the singing when they were babies. And then we have some sounds. This is a brief example about bellbird song in New Zealand. The first one is very far from the other audios, and the second one and the third one are very close. And these audios are from bellbird species. It means that they are the same species. However, they have a different dialect song. Well, as you could listen to the audios, there is a slight difference between these three audios. Then we have the champion dialects. This is a bird that is located, sorry, in the United Kingdom and also in Ireland. And here are some interesting details about the dialect in this species. Well, are the different dialects learned? And it is yes. The answer is yes. In champion species, they learn them, and this is a process where they have the same structure at the beginning of the call or the song, but it is because they grew up in the same nest. So if there are three birds growing up in the same nest, they are going to learn or to produce at the beginning of the song of the call the same structure. However, when they move to another territory, to the breeding season or something like that, they finish to fine tune their song and also their call. And in that moment is when they reproduce another dialect. And what is the function of these dialects? Where there is not enough evidence to show what they use the dialects for. In ornithology, the scientists are trying to discover what are the functions of these dialects. However, there is not enough evidence about that. And then we are going to listen to the rain call, the famous rain call that made this bird species. And something interesting is that some scientists believe or think that this sound, this call is produced before it rains. So they suppose or they believe that the sound is to show or to indicate that it is going to rain. Well, as you could listen to the audios, they are very short. As Noelia said before, the calls are shorter than the songs. And then we have here some pictures or images about how look the male and how look the female in these chaffinch birds.
So at this point, we consider important to do a comparison between verbs and humans' communication systems. Since some linguistic studies pointed out that the acquisition of songs and calls by verbs shows interesting similarities to that with the acquisition of language by human children. And even though a great deal or verb vocalization appears to be innate, as much of it appears to be acquired. Based on that, some points are highlighted. For example, the fact that singing ability and in verbs and linguistic ability in humans are both located in the same part of the brain. In this case, is the left one. But the most important, the most characteristic fact in linguistic ability and linguistic studies is the fact that was mentioned by my partners before, that some verbs, some special, some species cannot develop their fully characteristic songs if they are deprived of singing them, of hearing them during the early stages of their lives. So related with that, some experiments indicate that verb songs have both innate and learned components in their songs. And that explains how those verbs must be need to be in contact with their songs to be able to produce them in a correct way or in a complete form. So and then another point that is highlighted too is the fact that verbs need several seasons. Several seasons are required to acquire that song in a correct way. After that, we already know that there are some design characteristics that are related with communication systems. And in the case of our language, all of them are present, but it doesn't mean, but because it is the most sophisticated one, but it doesn't mean that we cannot share those characteristics with other types of system communications. In the case of bird communication, they have some of them that share with us. For example, a specialization that an example can found in alarm calls that are, any species that are symptomatic, but at the same time, they are specialized because they refers to different kind of predators. Then we have semanticy, that it refers to the ability that verbs have to communicate different kind of meanings. But in this case, it's limited because, as we already know, verbs can communicate, but just about certain aspects, for example, territory, hardship, food, and so on. Then we have arbitrariness, but this is, it is present in verbs communication systems, but it is highly adaptive. Then we have distractness, that is refers, to that ability to have some verbs to learn, there's some, even when they were raised in isolation, or they were deprived of their song for different reasons. They are able to develop their song, but it is not the same as the song that they have, that belong to their species. It's a kind of similar, but it's never going to be the same one, the complete one. Then we have productivity that is not present in birds' calls, but it is in songbirds, because well, there are evidence that there are some recombinations in their songs, but yeah, those recombination is not sure that they transmit noble messages. Then we have tradition, that is a fact that we can notice in the fact that some species need to be in contact with their songs to acquire it. And prevarication means to the fact that some birds have the ability to mislead to other species or to other birds. An example is the fact that some birds learn as many songs as possible, and they use that to gain more territory, or sometimes they use it to impress other species. And finally, we have learnability. It refers to the fact that birds can learn another species' songs, but just in a simple way. And finally, we have the questions, can we understand bird communication? And the answer to this is yes, we can learn how to understand communication, or bird communication, but it doesn't mean that we can communicate with them. It mostly refers to the fact that as humans, we can learn about birds' colors, patterns, and physical behavior. For example, we can learn that a bird is trying to communicate something, how a bird is feeling based on how they are flying, or based on how they move their feathers. To summarize, there is a lot of information that could be found in birds' behaviors and the intonation of their calls and songs. We can understand them, but it is not a fact that we can communicate with them in the way that we communicate with other people, sorry.
Well, as a conclusions, as we saw before, vocal sounds are made by a special organ that only birds have, and this is the syrinx. And the syrinx have two sides, and each side of the syrinx is controlled independently. Then we have that birds communicate in different ways, as we saw. There are calls, there are songs, there are body language to communicate each other. Then we have that there are dialects in bird communication, and these dialects can be found in songs and also in calls. And finally, although the communication system of birds shares some features with human language, birds do not have a complete system like humans. It means that we can understand what birds communicate each other, but birds cannot understand what we communicate or what we speak to them. And finally, we have the reference. And that's all about our presentation. Thank you.